Hello and welcome back to your favorite show, Hall Pro. I am joined alongside my star-studded cast of Louie Pasculli and Farnsworth Hendrickson. First off, boys, we got a lot of sports to talk about. We've got the NBA, preseason in the NFL. The Yankees are on a slump for whatever reason, and the Mets are still the Mets. But first off, I want to ask you guys, how are we doing today? It's been a while.
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here talking sports with my boys. And as you said, we have a lot on our plate, so I'm excited to just get into it.
And as for me, I'm looking forward to it as well. Got up, had some coffee, and I'm ready to talk about sports. Best day to live it.
I guess we're all ready. So enough looking forward. Let's just start it right now. NBA rivalry week has been announced. The NBA is announcing their rivalry week will begin middle to the end of January, January 24th through January 28th. The entire week will be filled with rivalry matchups. Some of the best ones: Celtics versus the Heat, Lakers versus Clippers, Grizzlies versus Warriors, Bulls v Hornets, Knicks v Nets. That's going to be the slate. It's a new thing the NBA is trying out. I know there were talks of a potential in-season tournament, but this can suffice as well. You have a lot of rivalries going on, and I have plenty to say, but I want to get your guys' thoughts first. Louis, I'll start with you on this one. How are you feeling about this announcement?
Yeah, well, first off, about the rivalries in general, I love it. I think this is such a great idea for the NBA. They're going to get so many viewers tuned in because those are the games as fans you really want to watch and enjoy is when you can beat a rival on either prime time or just a big game in general. And since they're building it up to be, this nice and big event, it's going to be 10 times better, I think. I think this is a really good job by the NBA in order to do this. And you don't really see other leagues doing this. Hockey has a Wednesday night rivalry night, but the teams will switch. It's not nearly as big as I think this is going to be. And then also, football has some kind of rivalry with division games towards the end of the year, but again, it's not up to the caliber of this. In baseball, there's very few specific rivalry games. In my opinion. So I think that, yeah, the NBA did a great job, and I'm just excited to watch. And as for a specific rivalry, I think the Knicks versus the Nets is always a classic. I'm always going to tune in for those games. So that's what I'll be watching.
Can't agree better too. Yeah, I'm looking for the rivalries as well too. Got some good games coming up this week at 7:30 p.m. The Chicago Bulls versus the Charlotte Hornet Nets. I'm looking forward to that because I grew up as a Chicago Bull fan, so I'm really looking forward to it as well too.
And I will say, the first thing that I thought of when I heard this announcement was college football. There's always a rivalry week, basically a rivalry Saturday, where the best rivalries in all of college football are played on the same day. Oklahoma and Texas isn't played on that day, obviously, but you do get Michigan, Ohio State usually, and you get Alabama, Auburn, and all the other smaller ones in between, all on one day. And it's just a day where all college football fans are just glued to their television because these are the best matchups. These teams don't like each other, and you know it's going to be an absolute brawl. And the games matter a lot. It's usually towards the end of the season. So for Alabama, Auburn, let's say, Alabama is usually on the edge of the college football playoff, but Auburn is always a team that can beat them, doesn't matter what year it is. And there's been a few years where things get ruined for Alabama in that late season rivalry matchup. If you remember the kick six, you know what I'm talking about. But when you mention teams that don't like each other, is what I think. You have the Warriors Grizzlies matchup. And that playoff series and everything in between, those teams had a lot of beef going around. The Grizzlies players on Twitter have said quite a few things towards the Warriors players on Twitter. Warriors players have fired back. Klay Thompson in his post-game press conference mentioned a tweet from a Grizzlies player, Jaren Jackson, after they won the championship. There is a lot of brewing beef between these two teams. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch because they're going to put their all into it. And this is a Warriors team coming off a championship and a Grizzlies team that thinks they're up next. And I don't think you see a lot of that in the NBA anymore because you have Bulls, Hornets. Do those teams really not like each other? Not really. Grizzlies, Warriors, though, those teams are not big fans of one another, especially in terms of what's on the court. Off the court's off the court, but on the court, those are two teams that are going to brawl and brawl. So that's the matchup that I want to see. But these matchups can be a lot different in terms of the personnel, right? You look at Knicks Nets, and there's been a lot of rumors going around of who is going to be on the Nets next season, and in particularly Kevin Durant. I know we talked about him last time I was on this show, and we were expecting him to be moved, but I remember saying that the Nets is still an option for Kevin Durant, and as of this recording, he is still currently a Brooklyn Net, as well as Kyrie Irving has not been traded as well. So in terms of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, I mean, is this going to be the situation? are the Nets going to keep Kevin Durant after all, or is Kevin Durant going to find a way to keep himself in Brooklyn? Kyrie looks like he wants to stay in Brooklyn no matter what. But for Kevin Durant specifically, will he be a Brooklyn Net by the start of the season, Farn?
Well, it's kind of hard to say. Los Angeles Lakers offered first rounders for Kyrie Irving, but the Nets are still not interested. So chances are quite slim for Kyrie Irving. So he might be able to stay, but chances are he might just be traded to another team. But we're looking forward to the future, though.
Right, I agree. I'm not too sure either. There are a few offers that were swirling around. I know the Celtics offered a lot, and the Nets, I think, are in a position that is similar to the Texans and Deshaun Watson. Now, I know that's one situation too. It's hard to compare sports, but basically, what the Texans did was they held out and they just waited until they got the best possible trade deal. For Deshaun Watson, and then they eventually, moved him to the Browns. So I think as for Kevin Durant, the Nets are going to do kind of a similar thing where they're just going to hold him. If he holds out, he holds out. But they're going to wait until they get the best possible deal and then move him. I think that is what we'll see. When that will come, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, there's been even rumors swirling around that Kevin Durant has threatened retirement over this situation. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's just going to be a ploy Kevin Durant would use. He may come back like Brett Favre, you never know. But there's a lot of things that can go on. I think at some point Kevin Durant will be traded, although I think at this point it's more likely that he stays at Brooklyn Net because the Nets don't have to trade Kevin Durant. If they just keep holding on to him, they'll see if Kevin Durant stays. I think the likely situation is that he pulls a Ben Simmons, his current teammate, where he stays on the team as long as possible. And the Sixers tried to hold on to Ben Simmons and tried to get a good value deal for him, and they just couldn't until the Nets swooped in. So Kevin Durant will probably hold out if he doesn't play, but he's at kind of the peak of his basketball career almost, or kind of at the end of the peak, but still at a very high level of play. And Kevin Durant, will he want to hold out? He might, if that means that he's going to be on a deal somewhere else.
That's a much better comparison. I like that comparison better than the one I made. Good job, John. Thank you for
Yep.
saving it.
We stay in the same sport, and we avoid situations such as that, and we're not going to talk about that again either. But moving on to a different trade that is not comparable to the last two, but maybe comparable to Kevin Durant just a little bit. Donovan Mitchell has again still not been traded. A lot of these rumors that we had swirling around, we thought it was just going to be done. But the Donovan Mitchell deal still is not done. The Utah Jazz have a very, very high asking price for a guy like Mitchell, understandably so, a very young superstar in the making, who still probably hasn't reached the peak of his basketball career yet. But there have been some talks with the New York Knicks. There's been some maybe talks with the Miami Heat. Maybe you may even want to throw the Brooklyn Nets in there. You never know. But again, it seems like the Jazz have a very high asking price. And Louie, I'll start with you. Where do we see this going? Do we see the Knicks getting him? Do we see Miami, or will he just stay at Utah Jazz at this point?
As a Knicks fan, I would love to see them acquire Donovan Mitchell, but I was looking at, the deals and the rumors that are going around, and I saw that the Jazz wanted 7 first-round picks for Donovan Mitchell. Now, I know he's a really good player, but the Knicks were scared to give up that much future assets to acquire Donovan Mitchell. But I do think, though, that the Knicks giving up picks would be better for the future than if they were to have to give up a bunch of young players, because then it's kind of like you're giving up young players to get a good young player, but then your team isn't ready yet. You still have to acquire more young good players to actually start competing, and being in a spot to make the playoffs and then go deep in the playoffs. So I would like to see the Knicks get Donovan Mitchell. I don't know if it'll happen. This has happened quite a few times with the Knicks in recent memory, where the media says, "Oh, the Knicks are going to get Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving," and then it just simply doesn't happen. But yeah, if the Knicks can get it down to a more reasonable, like 4 or 5 first-round picks, because they do have 8 at their disposal. They have 8 first-round picks that they have the ability to trade. So I think if they can get it to 4 or 5, then it would make more sense, because then they can keep the team intact and they wouldn't really have to worry about, moving Emmanuel quickly or Obi Toppin. I don't even know if he has trade value anymore, but one of those kind of guys. So I think it could happen. Will we see it happen? I don't know. Then again, what if the Knicks have a good offer and then the Heat just top it, and then he decides to go with the Heat and like, to the Heat because of the offer that the team selected. So I would like to see them get Donovan Mitchell, but it's just going to be really hard.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like Donovan Mitchell, his stats are good, and people, a lot of teams are going to be wanting him. And it's like you said, Louis, it's going to be quite hard to see him on certain teams like the Knicks and everything. But overall, it really just comes down to like what other teams can provide, like the money wise and everything, and what other teams are looking forward to, and how we working with other teams. So we got to look forward to is the future.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Knicks, I know the last thing they want to do is give up a player like RJ Barrett, but that may just be the asking price. And if I'm the Knicks, I'd probably stay away from that deal as much as possible. But Donovan Mitchell is still a great player, so we'll see if he ends up getting traded, although the Jazz can use him to build around. But getting 4, 5, 6 first-round picks for Donovan Mitchell would be huge because they just got a bunch for Rudy Gobert, and they'd be able to build for a long, long time. But two teams that are already built. We're going to move on to the MLB here. The Yankees and the Mets have both had really great seasons so far for the local teams around here. They've been really great, both teams leading their divisions. But starting off with the New York Yankees, I think it's been important to mention that there's struggles. A lot of fans are frustrated. They have been 2-8 in their last 10 games. To be frank, the Yankees stink right now. Doesn't make any sense. The Blue Jays are 7 games back. They have a chance because there's still plenty of games between these two teams, and you have a team like the Orioles swooping right behind them. Surprisingly enough, even Tampa Bay is still in the mix. So for the Yankees, they are losing a lot of games at the absolute worst time. And Farnsworth, I'm really surprised at how this team has performed because this was a team earlier that looked like they were unstoppable. And now they look pretty vulnerable and pretty mortal at this point.
Yeah, that's the downfall to every team. They start off good. They have great plays, great players that are doing phenomenal. But then the downfall continues with like injuries, certain players having like crazy like plays, but they don't like have like the ability to finish the plays quite well. So um, I still have hope for them. I will say I'm not giving lost to any of them, but all I can say right now is they just need to improve their game style a little bit more better.
Yeah, I agree. And I have a little quick story before I really get into my point. So me and my friends went to a Yankees game last Wednesday, and the Yankees were down. I believe it was 4-2 or 4-1 when the rain started, and it was raining pretty heavily. The field was all puddled up. So me and my friends were like, it was kind of late. It was like 10:30. It's like, I might as well head home. I live about an hour plus away, 1 hour and a half train ride away from the Yankee Stadium. So it's like, we'll head home. And sure enough, we get on the train, turn on the game, and they resume play somehow through that wet field. And then the Yankees ended up walking it off in the 10th. So if anyone asked, I was there. I watched it. Atmosphere was fantastic. What a fantastic game. I thought that was a funny story that I should start with since we're talking about the Yankees. But as for their play, I thought that game was going to be a turnaround game, perhaps, but it really wasn't as they went on and lost. I believe it was two more games after that. So this is my thing with the Yankees. It's not a matter of if they turn it around; it's only a matter of when. I think they have a really good team, and they are dealing with some injuries, as far as you mentioned right now. So when everybody is healthy, and also the Yankees get their bats going, as they have been for the first 100 games of the season, I think they're going to be just fine. Now, as for their play and how I feel in the scope of the division. I think that's the reward. They were one of the best teams ever in like MLB history in terms of wins up until this losing streak this part of the season. So their reward for being so good is that they can lose 10 games almost in a row and not really see a change in the division. Like they're going to be basically they're still first in the division and they still have a relatively good lead on the rest of the teams in the division. So I think that this is their, I keep calling it a reward. It's not really a reward, but this is what they get for being so good so early and for so long, is that they're going to be just fine through this rough drought. Plus, it's baseball. It's impossible to play 700 win percentage baseball for the entire 162 game season. It's the first time they've really struggled all season, and it's taken this long for them to struggle. That's just a sign of a really good team. So assuming that they can turn it around, and I really do think that they will be able to turn it around, they're going to get right for the playoffs. I think they're going to get in shape. They're going to get the bats going again. Maybe Joey Gallo. They should have kept him. They wouldn't have been losing all these games. No, I'm just joking. They definitely need to get rid of him. He needed a new destination. But nonetheless, I think when the Yankees turn around, they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, a lot of great points there. Again, that is the reward of playing so well before that you can have this lead. However, Blue Jays, they are getting hot at the perfect time. 7 games back. They've won the past 3 against the Yankees, got 1 game tonight as of this recording. They could finish off the sweep. I could be completely wrong. You could be saying, oh, the Yankees beat them by 20. Whatever can happen. But yeah, there's still another series between these two teams as well. The Blue Jays are getting hot. Their schedule isn't that bad, but the Orioles are looking pretty good. It's going to come down to how much do they want to wreck things because they're an inconsistent team, and they may just be a team that finds a way to beat the Yankees a lot, but can't really find out how to beat the Blue Jays. So there's a lot that can go wrong for the Yankees. However, if the Blue Jays still find a way to do what they do, the Yankees are still a wild card team at the very worst. They'll still find their way into the postseason. They have that much of a lead where they really don't need to win that many more games for them to, at the very least, have that final wild card spot. But I don't think that they're going to lose the division lead. I think it's very unlikely. But if this Blue Jays team gets as hot as they can, it may just be possible, and it may just happen that the Toronto Blue Jays will be the ones at the top of the AL East. It's a 7-game lead right now, and no lead under 10 is truly safe in baseball at this point in the season. But it's starting to wind down, so if the Yankees can go on a quick win streak, then they'll put enough distance in between themselves and Toronto. But one team that is really in the thick of it in terms of their division race that has had the lead for a while, the New York Mets, the New York Metropolitans, our New York Metropolitans. They've had a great season so far, a very surprising season as well. I think they've overshot expectations just a little bit, and that's a great thing for New York. But for Mets fans, I think everyone knew that this team was going to be good, but no one truly expected them to be this good. And it just feels like a Mets magic year, although a team that I was worried about, even when the Mets had a 15-game lead, was the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves, the defending World Series champions. I think a lot of people just kind of forgot about that. It's a 3-game difference between the New York Mets and the Atlanta Braves. Mets 78-44 so far. Braves 75-47. Louie, how are we feeling about the New York Mets this year? They've gone through a lot. Brett Beatty has been called up. He's been absolutely phenomenal. I know you want to talk about him a little bit, I'm sure. The pitching is returning. Mad Max is here. DeGrom is working his way back. The Mets are in a position where they're not even at their peak yet, it seems. What are your thoughts on this team so far?
I'm excited. I'm excited for the postseason. And, as Mets fans, it's a little taboo to say, but I promise you, I'm very excited for the postseason. Um, As for the Braves, they just keep winning. The Mets have a really good record, and the Braves have been right behind them the entire season. I always think, so you're right. You mentioned the Mets had a 15-game lead. After that lead was brought to about 5 or 6, it's been about 5 or 6, in that range for like the entire season. Because I'm like, wow, the Mets are really good, and then I look and the Braves are 5 games behind or 7 games behind, and it's always so close. So in a way, I think that's good though, because the Mets have the Braves hot on their tail, and the Mets players are aware of the situation that they're in. They're aware of how good of a team they are and what they're capable of doing. So having a team that close is like, okay, we need to be on our stuff. We need to make sure that we keep winning games. Like against the Phillies, they had a rough series against the Braves, and then they came back against the Phillies and they won 2 games. So it's exactly what they need to do against a winnable team like the Phillies, who also might be in a wild card spot. They might grab that third wild card spot. But nonetheless, that is a team the Mets absolutely need to take the series from. And they've been doing that. They seem to be doing that all season, as they haven't really let it get. They let it get a little bit close, but then they had a few wins to put some distance at least in between the Mets and the Braves. But looking forward into the postseason, I'm actually very, very excited. And remember, Tyler Meagle is still out. I don't know what he's dealing with. He's been out for like the whole year, but I love that dude. I hope he can come back. I think he'd also be a good addition to this already amazing staff. But think about it. If the Mets have a 7-game series, games 1 and 2 are Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer. Have fun getting 1 run against those 2 pitchers in 2 games. Then, the Mets might, drop a game or 2 so that the series then goes 5, 6, 7 games. Oh, look, guess who it is again? Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom again. So I think just because of that, it'll keep them in series, assuming that they pitch up to the caliber and quality that they normally do. So because they have such good pitching, I feel like you can't ever count them out. It's like when an NFL, here I go, comparing sports again. When an NFL team has a really good defense, they're almost never out of a game because the offense doesn't have to do that much. And I view that similarly to the Mets situation, where their pitching is really, really good, and I think they're going to stay in games, stay in series because of that. So I'm very excited to see what they do. Also, and to see how this race shapes up towards the end of the year, because as you said, no lead under 10 games is safe. So I think as long as the Mets keep doing what they're doing, though, and keep beating the teams they're supposed to, they will come out as first in the division.
Yeah, Louie, you summed it up quite well because the progression of the Mets is really phenomenal. Especially them getting back Jacob DeGrom. I knew he had I know that he had an elbow issue over the course, and he was healing up. And now that he's back with Max, they're going to be pitching like crazy. I know that for a fact, and I know you're going to be looking forward to that as well too. So I'm expecting some high things for that too. So
Even in a series, you mentioned Mad Max, you mentioned Jacob DeGrom. Bassett's been phenomenal as well. I mean, he's a strikeout king also, so have fun trying to hit against him. Carrasco's been good as well, and if McGill can come back, good luck trying to hit against the New York Mets. I mean, the bats have also been pretty solid as well. Pete Alonso has been in a bit of a down year, but 30 home runs is still a down year for Pete Alonso. Come on. And you look at the NL East, the Atlanta Braves and the Philadelphia Phillies both hold the 1 and 2 wild card spots. So you may see 3 NL East teams in the postseason. And at this point, it's likely that you're going to see that. So the NL East is also on the way up, and the Mets, they still sit at the top. So we'll see if they can hold on to the lead against the Braves. They'll have to play each other quite a bit. So we'll see whether those head-to-head matchups are going to be very exciting to watch. But moving on, Louis, you kind of mentioned the NFL. We're going to get into it now. And we all know you're a Jets fan. I think it's been pretty well, spoken about on this show. The amount of Jets fans also that we have at Pirate TV. The Jets avoided disaster with the knee of Zach Wilson. Everyone thought that he tore his ACL, myself included. But very fortunately, seriously for Jets fans and for everybody and Zach Wilson involved, it's not an ACL tear, a slight meniscus tear, and some sprain, but he will be back. Joe Flacco may also be back at this point. But for Zach Wilson and the New York Jets, they avoided disaster. How will this team power through? Because, again, this isn't a team that we're going to sit here and say will make the playoffs. I know, Louis, you may think differently. You never know. But this is a team that still wants to have a good year. This isn't a tank team, right? Zach Wilson is a young quarterback. They have some good pieces. They have a really solid squad, and they drafted very well this year, right? So for the New York Jets, how will this team be able to power through? Maybe not without Zach Wilson, but with potentially an injured Zach Wilson or a Zach Wilson that may be a bit more timid going forward, Louis.
I don't know, 17 playoff. You never know. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think it's going to be Robert Saleh. I think Robert Saleh's mentality, the kind of, style and, way that he goes about things and just like next man up mentality, hard-nosed football. I think that them rallying around both Robert Saleh and Zach Wilson getting healthy, plus the leadership of Joe Flacco, who seems to be, or he will be the starter week 1, assuming Wilson isn't ready. I think that's going to be really where the Jets can, not lose all hope, because when he went down, it was like, well, the only chance of having a good season is with this guy, and he might have just tore his ACL. Thank God that was not the case, though. Some people were speculating on Twitter incorrectly, got me scared. I know that. But luckily it was incorrect, and it was, best case scenario basically for him and the Jets. So I think it's going to be rallying around the coach, rallying around the veteran leadership that Joe Flacco is. And Joe Flacco, if Zach can't play week 1, I think Joe Flacco going out and balling against the Ravens, even if the Jets take the L, I mean, if it's a close and competitive game, it will have shown growth from last year, where there were very few close and competitive games. So I think that that's going to be really big. Plus, it's week 1. The Ravens are they always win their preseason games. It's been like 17 in a row or something crazy. But it's week 1. Anything can happen. That's you're not totally have the chemistry yet. They lost Marquise Brown to the Arizona Cardinals, so there's still going to be some figuring out to do on both ends for the Jets as well. They're not going to have all their chemistry yet either. But I think if the Ravens are less prepared than they typically are, and the Jets are less prepared than they typically are, I think that favors the Jets, because the Ravens are, I would assume, a better team. So that I will be looking for week 1 if Zach does not play. If Zach does play week 1, then that's a whole different story, because then the team can just rally around, oh, he's back, let's get hype, all that good stuff. Plus it's home, which I think helps as well. You always like to start off the season at home rather than on the road like they did last year. But I'm excited. I really hope that Zach can be back and Zach can play well. It does kind of stink though that he didn't get to play preseason, because most people say preseason doesn't matter, and they're kind of correct. But for a young developing quarterback, it matters so much, because it's reps against another team. It's live. You're not going against your defense as you have been in practice for the entire offseason. You're going against another defense with different schemes. You don't know what they're doing, and you got to figure it out. So that kind of stinks. He's not going to be able to do that. But nonetheless, I hope the best for him. If he's not ready for week 1, then hope Joe Flacco could just go out there and ball out.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange case with injuries with like other teams. Like I'm not talking about NFL. I'm talking about all teams like the NFL, which is football. But it's kind of hard to like decide like where it's at because like you said, preseason is important and it shows like development of a young athlete like Joe Flacco, and I'm looking for high expectations for him because Zach Wilson was really good, and with his knee injury, things might go differently. So hope he can offer a lot of good stuff, and I hope Robert Shaw can guide him into being a good player. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways the Jets can go. And there could be potential for the postseason. I mean, it would involve a lot of things going wrong with Buffalo, but there is a whole other situation. The New York Jets still in a developing phase, but they are on the right track. And for Zach Wilson, his knee health, very important for the New York Jets to be on the right track. So it's great to see that he's only out for maybe a few weeks. And I think we can all watch Joe Flacco again. It's a yearly experience. No matter where he is, Joe Flacco will usually start one game. Is he elite? Not anymore. Was he? Absolutely. I was always on that train. But looking to quarterbacks that we're trying to figure out, are they even good at the sport? The Carolina Panthers quarterback room. Baker Mayfield may be expected to be named the starter. Matt Corral, unfortunately, suffered an injury that will have him out for the season, a Lisfranc foot fracture. Sam Darnold, a former New York Jet, has not looked very good in preseason, has not looked very good in practice as well. A lot of Panthers reporters showing that Baker has been the guy and that it will be most likely that Baker will be the starter. PJ Walker started their preseason game before. They said, we don't even need to see you guys anymore. So it looks like Baker Mayfield will be the starter. And probably by the time this episode is released, Baker Mayfield may be announced as the starter for the Carolina Panthers. So a lot of Oklahoma association for the state of South Carolina, North Carolina. They may have an Oklahoma starting quarterback for not just the Carolina Panthers, but the South Carolina Gamecocks and Spencer Rattler, who was also coached by a former Oklahoma, not head coach, but an assistant coach. So a lot of OU association with the Carolina Panthers. But in terms of just football for Carolina, Baker Mayfield had a great start so far to his preseason play. It looks right for him to be in a Panthers jersey for some reason. The former Cleveland Brown, if we want to mention Deshaun Watson again, that whole trade was the reason that Baker Mayfield ended up leaving the Cleveland Browns. The Browns basically said, we have a better option if he's able to play. Watson ended up getting an 11-game suspension. Coincidentally enough, the game he returns is against the Houston Texans. That may be rigged just a little bit. Good job, NFL. But for Carolina, they now have Baker Mayfield, who is hungry to prove everyone wrong. He's been in this position before throughout his whole career. That the Browns should not have given up on him. But do you agree with that? Should the Browns have given up on him, and will Carolina have a solid year if Baker Mayfield is a starting quarterback? And will that even be the decision by Carolina, Farn?
It's hard to say. I've heard Baker Mayfield a lot on Twitter, and always people here talking a lot of crap about him and saying he's this, saying he's that. He's just a player. I've seen some of his offensive training sometime, and then it's good. It's good. It just seems he just needs a little bit more improvement. Uh, I would say he just needs a good solid 3 months, but I know that's not going to happen. But if he keeps on training like this, then hopefully he'll prove everyone wrong and prove the Cleveland Browns wrong as well too, proving them wrong that he was actually a pretty good player. So I got good expectations for him. I hope he can offer a lot in the Carolina Panthers and as a starting quarterback. So let's see what he can do.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's definitely going to play with a chip on his shoulder. Assuming everyone stays healthy, the offense isn't even that bad. Like, he's got the most versatile running back in football. He has Robbie Anderson, who might have forgotten how to play football. But assuming he remembers how to play football, him and DJ Moore should be really, really good. And their offensive line isn't horrible. Like, it's not good. It's not great. It's not bad. It's pretty mid. So I think with a chip on his shoulder, with a determined Baker Mayfield, I'm assuming he also knows how to play football. He can actually do pretty decent with the Carolina Panthers. Now, remember in 2018, I was calling for the Jets to draft Baker at 3. He went at 1, so the Jets obviously couldn't get Baker at 3, and the rest is history. But this is good for my narratives because I, had called for Baker over Darnold, and now Baker is literally starting over Darnold, which is kind of funny. But poor Sam Darnold. He hasn't really gotten a chance. I mean, he obviously has gotten chances, but it seems like every year he's got to learn a new offense. He's just thrown into the fire whenever he possibly can be. So kind of feel bad for Sam Darnold. But yeah, back to Baker Mayfield. I do think he has a chance to prove some people wrong. I mean, I don't think they're going to be a Super Bowl team, right? I don't think they're going to make a deep run in the playoffs, but I think be competitive, win a few games. I think Baker Mayfield is more than good enough to do that as well. So that's what I expect from the Panthers. But now talking about Baker Mayfield involving the Browns, I think the Browns kind of gave up on him because when they realized they could acquire a quarterback with the talent of Deshaun Watson. However you feel about off the field is a totally different story. But on the field, he's a very good player. And, the Browns thought that I guess they could acquire this guy for not too steep of a price. And he's significantly better than Baker Mayfield. So they went ahead and did it. So I can understand it from a management perspective. It kind of stinks for Baker, but it just kind of shows that, again, it reminds us that this is an industry, it's a business. So that's why they did it. And like I said, I feel bad for Baker too because he just kind of he brought them out of being like a winless franchise. He brought them to the playoffs. He won a playoff game against the Steelers, who had won 13 games in a row, and then of course they had a poor end to the season. But they, like the Browns were a lower seed than the Steelers, and Baker Mayfield was able to go out there and win that game for that Browns organization. What a good day for all Browns fan across the U.S. And then just to have him, get traded away to the Panthers, it does kind of stink for Baker. But I can also understand why the Panthers did it. So I think he'll be playing, or the Browns did it. I think he'll be playing with a chip on his shoulder at the Panthers. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, you also have to remember Baker's shoulder injury and all his injury issues throughout the season.
So literally a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, quite literally. He probably also has a plate in there somewhere. But Baker Mayfield has dealt with a lot of injuries, especially that shoulder injury that held him back pretty much all year. I don't think he should have been playing football at that point. He should have been given the rest. He should have given himself the rest. But this is also Baker Mayfield, who just wants to play every single day and do whatever he can just to be on the field. But he should not have been playing football at that point. I think he may still be a Cleveland Brown if he did not play during that stretch. But moving on to a quarterback that we know is pretty good at football, Arron Rodgers, the Packers legend, one of the greatest quarterbacks in Packer history, maybe the greatest, depending on who you ask and how old you are, had some complaints about his wide receivers. After losing Davante Adams, I think I'd also complain about receivers. In an interview after a practice, to keep the quote a little shorter, he said, "You keep dropping the ball, you're not going to be out there," because some of his receivers in practice, he believes, has not been showing up. They have not been coming to work. They have been playing poorly, to be honest. And that Arron Rodgers was able to basically just air them all out to the media and to everybody. And he's been highly critical of his receivers. And this is a quarterback who has not been given receivers very often throughout his career. You have a year for the Green Bay Packers where there are a lot of receivers on the board, and they said, you know what, we're going to trade up. And Packers fans were thinking, oh, wow, we can draft a receiver. No, they drafted a quarterback when you have Arron Rodgers. So it was really interesting. The Packers didn't really know what Arron Rodgers' timeline was. I don't think he knows what timeline he's even on in terms of the universe with everything else that he's been doing through the offseason. So Rodgers is a quarterback who has been through a lot, is going through a bit of a transformation in his old age as an NFL quarterback. And now he's out here talking smack about his own wide receivers, people he's supposed to build a bond with and become boys with, basically. And it's great for accountability, but it also makes you question, what is the chemistry of this football team? Because you need that chemistry to win a Super Bowl. Louie, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this situation?
Bart Starr is the best Packers quarterback of all time. Just saying.
Valid.
Okay, I'm happy you agree. Okay, so with Arron Rodgers, I always thought he was a better athlete than Tom Brady, but never a better quarterback, and it was because his leadership or lack thereof. And this is, I think, an example of that. Instead of having a meeting with the team, or even just with the wide receivers, right, saying, "Hey guys, I don't really like the work ethic. I don't like what you're doing. Let's change it. Let's get better together. We got games to win. You guys can't be slacking off or doing whatever." No, he went to the media, and he said, "They are bad, not we as a group." It's them. They are bad. Obviously, we know he's a good quarterback. He's going to be a Hall of Famer, probably first ballot. But I personally don't think he should have done that. He just threw them under the bus. I know he can't contribute to their work ethic. That's not his job. But even so, he could have hyped them up and had talk to them privately rather than just immediately go to the media and then, crap on them and be like, oh, if you keep dropping passes, you're not gonna be on the team. Yeah, that's how it works, Aaron. Like, come on. I don't know. I know he's good. I know he's worked for what he has, and he kind of does have a right to say that because it's right. Like he knows he's a Hall of Famer, and he wants his wide receiving players to be up to that caliber. But he said it. He's going from Hall of Famer to Hall of Famer. So what's the problem, Aaron? I don't know. Perhaps I'm just angry for no reason, but I really don't think he should have done that. I think he should have had a meeting with them first. That's just my opinion.
And I totally agree with that. Going to the media first was a very poor option. I don't agree with that. But he is completely in the fact, like, he's completely right about it, crapping on his own players. If you don't provide the work ethic toward the team won't improve. And these are new guys. And obviously, fans of the Packers are looking for high expectations for the younger guys. And if you're not putting in the work, like not showing up for practices, not doing so and so, it's other players like Aaron Rodgers himself, like OG players, are gonna have like start looking at you guys like, what are you guys doing? Like, this is not the way that we used to do it. We always showed up. We do the work that no one else watches, and I completely agree with him. But the way he conveyed it was very poorly done, and now every like Packers fan is like losing their mind. I saw some on Twitter like saying like, "Oh no, like our new guys are just like gonna suck, and we can't do nothing about it." And that's what he messed up at. And now everyone's gonna have false hope for the Packers, but we'll see. Maybe Aaron Rodgers can pull them to the side, like Louie said, and they could talk to them and like, let's change up how we play the game, and hopefully that'll work. But we'll see in the future, and that's all I can say.
John Makuch, you are a fantastic host, and I would not rather have anyone else be a host. But imagine if I saw you doing something wrong, and instead of talking to you, the next episode, I was like, nope, he's bad at his job. That's it. It's over. Like, it really doesn't make any sense to me. Sorry, that, again, comparing things that are probably incomparable, but that's how I feel that he did it, and he just did it incorrectly.
Louis, I do appreciate that. I appreciate you wouldn't air me out on the show. And I think Aaron
I
Rodgers
don't think you
is.
can do anything wrong, by the way, John. I think you're
Hey,
just
hey,
a perfect host.
hey, man. We'll leave that up to the viewers to decide. I
Exactly,
appreciate that.
exactly. I'm
Exactly.
sure they agree.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, you got Aaron Rodgers, a quarterback who is just, I mean, we all know how good he is. But it seems like he just picked the wrong 2K dialogue option on this one to just get minus chemistry and plus fans. But I think he got minus fans and minus chemistry as well. If you get that one, shout out to you. But according to ESPN, they actually did a meeting, a private meeting that wasn't called by Rodgers after the media criticism that the offense got to meet and talk about this. And quote from a receiver, Samori Toure, said it was really just giving us advice, basically letting us know that Green Bay receiving cores have always been held to a super high standard. All the legends who have been here, it's just about us carrying on that standard and stepping up. Also, Romeo Dubs, a fourth-round pick, also talked about this meeting. Aaron spoke to us about what he likes or what not, just based on concepts or what he sees. He just wants us to see what he sees, so that then that way we can be able to react faster, play faster, and just be able to dominate and continue to be who we are. So it seems that after this meeting, it was kind of ironed out, fleshed out. Everybody had their talk. But I think these receivers would also appreciate, one, if they didn't have to go to the media to talk about the meeting that they just had. And two, if Aaron Rodgers didn't basically just, again, like I've said a few times, air them out. I think they'd rather have passes aired out to them rather than them being awful at the game, according to Aaron Rodgers' view, just told to the media, and I don't think he even wants us to talk about it right now. But we are, because it's a big story, especially when nothing else is going on. So Aaron Rodgers, he put his tea out there, and everyone's sipping on it, but I think the receivers would just like him to pour it out. That's what we like to see. So it's a tough situation.
One more thing. All Aaron Rodgers had to do was say, listen, you guys got to be willing to take on Darren Sharper, the hardest hitting safety in the league, and everything would have been fine.
Right.
Right?
It would have been great. Greg Jennings. Just watch that Greg Jennings
Literally.
video. Former
Literally.
Packer, right? You have to be like Greg Jennings. If you break your leg, you must continue going.
And score a touchdown.
Right. And I
Yeah,
think
it was
Baker
like
Mayfield.
some of the new guys don't want to listen. They just want to do their own thing. They think they're like the
Yep.
the guy, and they want to like do their own thing, and that kills me. You're not the guy, but that's not important.
Yeah. A lot of these players just going through a lot right now. And they just need to have that embodiment of Greg Jennings. I think Arron Rodgers also needs to have a embodiment of just shutting his mouth sometimes as well. But that's besides the point. That may do it for Hall Pro, unless if you guys have anything else that you want to add to this show, any other tidbits, anything else you want to throw in there. Yeah.
Well, real quick, Seton Hall sports have started. I'm so excited. Thank gosh they are back. I'm going to be watching and consuming all the Seton Hall sports possible. So let's go Hall.
Let's go Hall here on Hall Pro. I'm also very excited to be a part of some of these broadcasts, of some of these specials that we're going to do here at Pirate Television for Seton Hall Sports, because there's a lot going on this year. Volleyball is back, soccer is back, and basketball is just right around the corner. But that will do it for this episode of Hall Pro. I've been John Makuch, joined alongside the wonderful Louie Pasculli and the wonderful Farnsworth Hendrickson. It has been a great time as always, but that will do it for this episode. See you all another time.